Big welcome to you, Alex Irune, CEO of Oando Clean Energy. We've heard a lot about some of the exciting plans you're doing. Can you share a little bit about that with us today?
Thank you very much. It's always good to be at COP, and it's most especially good to be with you guys, BCG being the partners this year. Look, for us, we've had to come to the reality like everybody else. The world is certainly telling us now, not in any unclear terms, that we must do something. And as a significant player in the oil and gas space in Nigeria, but more importantly, as custodians of the future, we owe it a responsibility to set a path that allows us transition as an oil and gas company and as a country, Nigeria, to that more sustainable mode of operation, because energy is what it is. We're always going to need it. The question is, how do we balance how it's created, how it's consumed, and the processes and byproducts of that entire value chain. It's a pleasure to be here, and I hope we can spend a bit of time talking about some of the exciting stuff that we're looking at.
Great. Tell us about some of the specific businesses that you are considering.
So, currently what we've done as an oil and gas company is create a clean energy company. And then it's a subsidiary, but it's an entity of its own. It has its mandate. In fact, the mandate of that company has changed the overall mandate of our group. We see the future as an energy company, a provision of terajoules of energy. So we no longer see it as oil and gas or barrel of oil equivalent. We see it as a combined portfolio where renewable energy would continuously play an increasingly larger portion of that portfolio. We're certainly, as a clean energy company, looking at the first and the lowest hanging fruit, right? And that is transportation, right? Lagos is the most populous city in sub-Saharan Africa. It's 20 million plus people. And it contributes on a daily basis effectively above 40,000 kilograms of CO2, right, or equivalent. Now, shifting just the municipal transport system from diesel run to electric vehicles or a cleaner source of energy takes out a significant proportion of that, those emissions. And for us, that was a natural first thing to do. So we've partnered with Lagos State to drive a transition of their municipal transport. These are the big buses that take over 7 million people around the entire state for various activities, from diesel run buses to clean energy buses. And that's the most significant project we're embarked on at the moment. We do have other projects in the clean waste to energy space. Also solar. We're looking at a giga solar processing and assembly plant in country, and various other activities in that space. Thermal energy is a big thing for us. As an oil and gas company, you can appreciate that we have wells that we've drilled for oil and excavated the oil. Those same wells can invariably be used to generate heat and create thermal energy to drive turbines to create the relevant energy in a clean and sustainable way. So those are,
yeah. So very exciting indeed. So what are some of the challenges you face trying to kick off an effort like this?
I think the key challenge is will. Yeah, it's nothing else. I think it's will. It's the desire to take that step in an unknown direction that potentially changes the outcome of everything you have defined up until this moment. And having that will, that courage to do that was our biggest challenge. Having done that, the rest of it is what we do every day. We understand how to project manage. We understand how to think about the challenges of Africa and build bespoke solutions for the continent and the country. And we've taken that same approach with clean energy and driven the impetus from the existing business, which is the oil and gas business, into, I'm talking the research, the development, the proof of concept. All of that has been done by the resources that we currently have in the core business that we operate. And this is the first step for us.
It's, I think will is important. I'm going to push a little bit harder.
Yeah.
I think when we talk to people about investments in climate-friendly businesses, we hear things like the technical feasibility can be a challenge. You are asking people who know how to do projects to do slightly different projects. The return profiles could be different, or the revenue sources could come from different angles. I'd love to hear you talk about how you overcome some of those.
Yeah. That's interesting, and I think you've laid out all the sort of in-project challenges. None of that can happen without the enabling environment, so I think the government comes first. But I speak about will because the truth is, if we don't engage the government and force the thinking into strategic policies that support a lot of our ambitions, then it doesn't matter how technically feasible a project is or how much capital is available for it, it just wouldn't be commercially viable. So I think the enabling environment is the first step, and I'm glad COP brings the governments together to make those commitments, which then force those environments. You've seen Nigeria take a position on that by 2060, net zero. It's a 1.9 trillion investment between now and then, invariably $400+ billion, continuous spend on an annual basis, and it's a daring, very bold challenge. On the back of that, we've seen the policies that have come to light, and that has given us the impetus. So I say in Nigeria, we're comfortable with the direction of policy. When we move to technical feasibility, for us, technical feasibility has always been a challenge, even in the oil and gas space. In technology, digital revolution ahead of us, technical feasibility is a challenge. We must transfer the knowledge, we must transfer the tools and the equipment, but it has to be done in a slightly different way. The continent is relatively poor. We must take that into consideration. The concept of a just transition speaks largely to how we equip our people, and I'm talking the pipeline of talent that would create these businesses you're talking about, but more importantly, the technical expertise and technical equipment that will drive the transition. A huge challenge, but again, we surmount those challenges in an orderly manner. So you have the right environment. You, as large corporates, I keep saying the oil and gas companies with the balance sheets are the ones that can take the risk. We would have to lead this transition. Simply because, one, the economics don't work as of today. We're looking at probably about 3%, in most cases negative returns. But there also is an element of risk that needs to be taken at the early stages that perhaps needs some guarantees and support to take those risks. And that's the approach we've taken. So proof of concept stage, we're excited about funding it. We're not desperately looking out there to anyone else because we know these solutions will work. We're confident they will work. We see the value add immediately. And the final thing, just to wrap up, is the fact that capital will find a home where there is a return that outstrips the options that are available to that capital wherever it sits. Yes, Africa has a profile that is not particularly risk-friendly, but I think it's our job to de-risk, and that is something we must own as Africans.
No, I think it's very interesting to hear you share a little bit around how the parent organization supported this transition. What sort of thoughts or ideas you have for smaller organizations, businesses, looking to embark on a similar effort, who may not have as much access to these resources that you would have as a big organization?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. I must say that that's where the big challenge is. And a lot of the conversations that center around funding, I think, must focus on those companies and those entrepreneurs. Great ideas in the waste to energy space I've seen, great ideas in carbon capture, hydrogen from air effectively. They need the support of funders that will take the risk. But I still believe that there's an element of de-risking of that ecosystem that has to happen that then makes the journey for these smaller companies better. And this is why I started off with the point saying we must lead. Unfortunately, the risk of a solo venture in a country like Nigeria is relatively higher than one in Norway. However, I can tell you for a fact that if you came into Lagos, there's certainly bankable PPAs, these are power purchasing agreements, that can justify solar projects. However, they may not be of the scale that we typically look for in large commercial funding or large transaction funding. And we've got to figure out a way to find a solution again that works for the continent. And we have an interesting way about that. We look at aggregation. We say these small players, if we look at a way to aggregate their need and their ambitions, then we can fund it as one tranche, even though they're addressing slightly different needs, as long as the economic base is the same, i.e. the commercial viability. So for me, that's the approach. The approach is to get the small players to a softer landing by us creating the progress that's required to bringing a lot of the investment and the people and the attention, and then trying to get methods and ways to aggregate them such that we can build the capacity and then demonstrate it or offer it as a commercial risk that can be absorbed by somebody else.